over allegations that the company harmed youth mental health. As a result of this settlement, Wisconsin is set to receive $219 million, and we could receive up to $313 million if certain industry conditions are met. Now, the next step is determining where the funding is going to be directed. What I'm going to be doing is everything I can to put these funds toward keeping kids safe in Wisconsin. Some potential examples of how these funds could be used include crisis intervention services, after-school programming, digital wellness, youth mental health programming, supporting the hiring of digital literacy counselors, and training for medical providers on interactive media use and body dysmorphia. And then last, they could also go to grants for school districts to support mental health. These numbers make this the largest big tech settlement in the history of the country. It's also the largest state consumer protection settlement ever, aside from those involving big tobacco, in a case where there's a single company that's settling. From my perspective, though, more important than the dollars we're talking about are the sweeping new safety measures for kids that Meta is going to be required to implement as a direct result of this settlement agreement. These changes are not only going to help reduce harms for our kids' mental health online, but I hope they can set a new standard for the entire industry so that kids who are using social media can stay safe and remain healthy as they're online. We want to see this agreement prompt other companies to make similar changes. Now, the changes that Meta is going to be required to implement are groundbreaking, and they go beyond anything previously ordered by a court. As Attorney General, public safety is my top priority, and keeping kids safe is of the utmost importance. The challenges that kids face today are fundamentally different than the safety challenges that I faced as a kid. When I was a kid, we would talk about, people would talk about looking both ways before you crossed the street. Now kids spend a lot of their time online. They are in a digital world, and making sure that we are taking actions to keep kids safe is fundamental to what we do at DOJ to protect public safety and is at the root of this agreement. So today, it takes a concerted effort from kids, but also their parents and their family members, from schools and from communities to prioritize real-world interactions and learning. And it takes just as robust an effort to protect kids from the threats that they face online, threats that range from exploitation to sextortion to addiction and isolation, as well as mental health harms from addiction to social media. The world is changing rapidly, and it's part of Wisconsin DOJ's mission to meet this moment by combating the new threats that social media poses to our kids' mental health and to take those challenges head on. That's why I and a coalition of AGs from other states sued Meta Platforms in October 2023 following our multi-state investigation. In our lawsuit, we alleged that the company knowingly designed and deployed harmful features on Instagram and its other social media platforms that purposely addict children and teens. We've also alleged that Meta falsely assured the public that these features are safe and suitable for young users. Instead of taking steps to address those harms, we alleged that Meta concealed the extent of the psychological and health harms suffered by young users addicted to its platforms. Beyond this, the company is alleged to have known that young users, some under the age of 13, were active on the platforms and knowingly collected data from those users without parental consent. In addition to those allegations, our suit alleged that Meta targeted these young users and described that such a user base was, quote, valuable but untapped, unquote. Well, this settlement resolves those claims as well as other claims by other settling states and territories. So today, as part of this settlement with Wisconsin and the coalition, Meta has agreed to implement significant new kid safety features on Instagram and Facebook. As I said before, these are some transformative features that are in place. For those who are under 13, they are not supposed to be on these platforms, and there are going to be stronger age verification measures in place. For those between the ages of 13, from the ages of 13 to 17, this agreement will create a combined 2-hour daily limit for both Facebook and Instagram in total. There will be mandatory pauses at 15 minutes, 60 minutes, and 90 minutes. The goal of that is to help interrupt what my kids would refer to as doom scrolling online. There are also restrictions on nighttime access. Those will limit the hours when these platforms are available to kids. There are going to be limits on school time access as well. Specifically, there's going to be an elimination of push notifications during school hours. As I mentioned, there are going to be more robust age assurance measures, and there are going to be safer age-appropriate content controls in place, including stronger safeguards against bullying, content promoting eating disorders, and content related to suicide and self-harm. There are going to be stronger, more friendly, user-friendly parental controls in place as well, so parents are going to be able more easily to play a larger role in limiting their kids' use of these platforms. And there are going to be limits on social comparison features, including certain beauty filters and visible like counts that have been linked to poor mental health outcomes in kids and teens. Now, these are groundbreaking new changes that are geared toward making social media safer for kids and providing parents with stronger tools to be involved in their kids' online lives. There's no doubt that this settlement is historic, but it's also my sincere hope that this is an inflection point where after these changes go into effect and after today's settlement agreement has now been announced, other big tech firms and social media companies beyond Meta will hear our message that we are committed to getting accountability from social media companies that engage in conduct that harms our kids. And now is the time for them to make the kind of sweeping changes in the name of kids' safety online. These changes will be implemented over a period of time. Most of the changes will go into effect within 6 months of the judgment, and there will be some changes as soon as 2 months from the entry of the judgment. This is a fundamental change in the way that kids are going to, social media will play a role in kids' lives, at least with respect to Instagram and Facebook. And we are committed to ensuring that we are doing what we can to keep our kids safe from these online harms. So with that, I'll take any questions that folks may have.
All right, everyone, a little bit of housekeeping. So we're now going to take on-topic questions from media members. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we will call on you in the order in which you ask your question. Once we call on you, we will promote you to panelists that you may speak. This might take a second. As a reminder, if you're on your phone, you can press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute or unmute yourself once you're called on. We will begin momentarily. Mitchell Schmidt.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the time today. You had mentioned early on that Wisconsin is set to receive, I believe you said was 219 million or up to 313 million, and said if certain industry conditions are met. Would you be possible to kind of expand on that a little bit? And then if there'd be any sort of info on the timing for these funds?
Yeah, there are a couple aspects of the settlement that will be strengthened if there are other agreements reached or other conditions imposed on other social media companies. So first, with respect to some of the limits that I talked about, for the limits, for example, on nighttime hour usage, as well as the time limits per day, if TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube are subject to similar limits, then they will apply even stronger here. In terms of the settlement amounts, if we receive resolutions of a certain amount from TikTok as well as YouTube, then that would lead to the fuller amount being recovered as part of the settlement. We can get you the precise numbers on what those are required to be, but there's some nuance to it, because if we as a state receive a proportion of the total amount, that would trigger the obligations that Meta has towards Wisconsin, or if nationwide there's a certain amount that could also trigger the obligations.
All right, next up is Vanessa.
Hi, thank you. Where does the suit stand in terms of the other apps you mentioned, like a TikTok or Snapchat? If all of these restrictions are just being put in place for Instagram and Facebook, I could imagine that would drive kids just to use those other apps more. So what's next for these other platforms?
Yeah, there are a couple things I would say. So first, we were part of a multi-state investigation into social media use generally. It was not specific to Meta platforms. And so Companies are well aware that we're not just looking at meta platforms right now. We're looking at the landscape of social media companies. Companies that step in and try to take advantage of the fact that Meta is putting in place these requirements that they've been obligated to it should be clear to them that they are on notice, that they are going to be held accountable for the conduct they're engaging in. This is a massive settlement amount with Meta here, but the types of settlement amounts the types of recoveries we could be seeking from others if they engage in conduct that tries to take advantage of this situation could be very significant. So we are committed to seeing not just change on one platform, not just on Instagram or not just on Meta platforms, but throughout the social media industry.
Ben Hansen.
Hi, thank you very much. What kind of damage were you seeing with children at a local state level here in Wisconsin that made you want to join this effort?
Well, first, I think anybody who has kids knows the draw and the allure of these social media platforms. And as kids get into their teenage years and are of the age where they're able to use these platforms, there have been lots of harms that have been documented. But one certainly concerning aspect is the addictive nature of these platforms and the fact that kids can use lots and lots of time on them. Another concern is the mental health harms that occur from some of these comparison features. Kids, for example, seeing beauty filters online and trying to compare themselves to somebody else's filtered image, or seeing the like counts that somebody else racks up on Instagram and somehow feeling like that's a judgment of their social status. And then on top of that, there are conversations about concerning topics, which is why some of the content restrictions here are so important. Things like bullying that's happening, or conversations about self-harm or eating disorders. So there are widespread harms that we've alleged are linked to these social media platforms and to the addiction of it. We've alleged that these companies, that Meta specifically knew about these harms and yet continued to do what it was doing. So this kind of massive settlement amount, as well as these kind of game-changing changes in how these platforms do their business with respect to kids who are online, is going to fundamentally change the way that social media, the role that social media plays in kids' lives. Again, this is not the complete industry, but it's a critical part of it.
Jesse.
Thank you. Could you just expand a little bit more on the allocation of these funds once the state has them? And is this a situation where DOJ has full discretion over what to do with them, or do you need to work with the legislature on this?
Yeah, no, DOJ will be assessing the precise allocation of these funds. The vast majority will be going toward addressing mental health harms for kids in Wisconsin. The settlement agreement provides for 50% of the overall settlement at a minimum going towards addressing the types of harms that have caused. And there are a number of different examples of the types of programs that may benefit from these settlement funds. That includes things like grants to school districts, youth mental health programming, after school programming. So what we're going to be doing in the weeks ahead is assessing how we can use these funds most effectively to help kids. Of course, it's also important that we continue to be able to do this work and that work is funded so that we are continuing to hold the industry accountable for the kind of conduct that we've alleged is occurring.
This is the last call for questions. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand and we will call on you. Scott?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to re-ask Jesse's question. So DOJ has sole discretion on how this money is spent?
Well, we're subject to the conditions of the settlement agreement. So the settlement agreement lays out how the funds can be utilized. As a practical matter, the majority of the funds here from the settlement will be going towards various programs that support youth mental health, things along the lines that I talked about. We will be in contact with stakeholders and others about how we can use those funds most effectively to ensure that they're they're serving the purpose that they're designed to, which is remediating the harm and helping with kids' mental health going forward.
Great. That concludes today's press conference. Thank you all for joining. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the DOJ Communications Office. We are at dojcommunications@doj.state.wi.us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.